Hello, I'm Robert, and this is another one of these stories from the Daily Express. Asteroid warning, Earth will be hit by rock size of dinosaur-ending strike, expert claim. And this is just nonsense. When they talk about an expert, they're actually talking about me, just a science blogger. I'm not an asteroid expert. And what I actually said in the thing that they're quoting there is that Earth will not be hit by rock the size of a dinosaur-ending strike in this century. So they've actually said the opposite of what I was saying, if you read further down. So there you are. It says it's Earth every 100 million years or so, and with 66 million years passing, the planet can expect another one in the relatively near future. That's not what I said. That doesn't change anything. Even if it was 1 billion years had passed, it makes no difference to the chance of another one happening this century. And they said, so now let's look at what I actually said. I said, yes, the ones that large hit every 100 million years or so on average. Then I go on to say that that's a very low chance, and we know all the 10 kilometre or larger near-Earth asteroids are the same size as the dinosaur ones. And then if I pick that up, which I think I might have already, then I have a list of them. And the 4 asteroids and 4 comets are the ones that go close enough to Earth to be something to keep an eye on. And the only one of those, the comet Swift-Tuttle, has a chance in 4479, so that's 2,300 years from now. And then there's the asteroid 433 Eros, which could hit us sometime after 1 million years from now. But it's not likely to before 100,000 years, and it's got a very small chance. And it actually orbits permanently well outside our orbit, 43 Eros. And it's just Swift-Tuttle is really the one that's only one that's and we've got plenty of time. Got 2,300 years. And then this is about the largest that's still to be found, which will be about 3.5 kilometres. And we found all the ones of 10 kilometres larger, and this is why we know why we found them, these big telescopes. And look how huge that one is. That is the size of a door that a human being can walk through. This is the main one, Pan-STARRS. And that's been looking at the skies for a long time now. And then this is Atlas, and that's a relatively new one. And this does this kind of entire sky, seen from its location, which is nearly always clear nights. It does the clearest scans the entire sky every 3 days. And this is a big radio telescope, and there's several others, just some of the top ones. Radio telescope is useful if it gets close for doing very, very accurate predictions. So, and if you talk about the 10 kilometres is the size of a dinosaur one, and the 1 kilometre one, we come down to one of those. They're very rare as well, and it takes 1 kilometre before you get to the point. Let's see if I can find the 1 kilometre one. Maybe it's up. Maybe I have to go up. Scroll down a bit. Yeah, there's the 1 kilometre one. So that's 700,000 years ago, the last time one of those hit. Because they're very rare. The big ones are very, very rare, even 1 kilometre. And that is just big enough so that it sends some dust up into the atmosphere that can cool the Earth slightly, like you get from a volcanic eruption, and then you can get the dust and ash, and that cools the Earth a bit. You don't get rocks thrown all around the Earth. You just get dust and ash. And this early hominid, it was too long ago for the Neanderthal man or the Homo sapiens like us. Homo erectus saw this one, a primitive tool using hominid. So those are very rare as well, and we found 901 of the 1 kilometre ones so far. and all of those have been removed and been proved to not be able to hit Earth, except for one, 1950 DA, which has a tiny chance in 2880. So that's 2883. Subtract that from 100. That's 780 years in the future, 7 centuries, and so and it's expected to miss. And we've got loads of time for our great far many grandchildren to do something about that one, on that very, very remote chance. And we can spot, so we found 901 of the 1 kilometre ones, which are just big enough to have some effect on our weather, and they could damage the crops if it was the wrong time of the year for one season at that size. Below that, and it depends a little bit on what it's made of and the speed and the direction and what it hits, but generally 1 kilometre is the point at which it starts to have some effects on our global weather, enough to have some effect on our crops for one season. But we don't need to worry about those either. They're extremely unlikely. That, I say, there's only 1 out of 901. There's perhaps 50 or so, a few dozen left to be found. We found several of those, one of them every month or two, and we should find most of them by the end of the 2020s. And the few that are left, they nearly all of those remaining 50, over to how many they are likely to be the far side of the Sun, and to have nearly the same orbit as Earth's, because we've been looking at them very carefully for at least a decade. So to have been hidden from view for an entire decade, and to be in an orbit sufficient to come close to Earth fairly often, then it would have to be, like several times a century sort of thing, then it would have to be nearly all of them will have probably been hiding behind the Sun in an orbit that's almost the same as Earth's, but it's like either catching up very slowly or falling behind very slowly. And when they fall behind far enough, and having drifted just for a decade, and they'll still be pretty much behind the Sun. And we can see most of the sky, apart from the Sun, so we can see it all the way from dawn all the way to dusk, and just a little bit the dawn side of the Sun, but when the Sun rises, then just before it rises, there's a little bit of the sky before the Sun rises that we can't see. And then when it sets, then after it sets, we can't see for a little while. And the Sun is in just one fixed direction from the Earth. It's not actually moving relative to the Earth, except very, very slowly. It's fixed and we're going around it. And it takes an entire year to move through the entire sky as seen from Earth. So that is just a tiny little slice, a little bit of the dawn sky, a little bit of the dusk sky that we can't see with our telescopes. All the rest of the sky we can see overnight in clear night sky. So if there is a 1 kilometre asteroid, then it's probably hiding in that sector of the sky, and then as it gradually drifts out of the way from beyond the Sun into view, as soon as it gets beyond out of either dawn or the dusk sky and gets into the proper night sky, then all of those big telescopes will be seeing it, the ones I showed you, and then they'll all spot it. Atlas probably fastest, because it does the entire sky in 3 days, 3 nights. And then it's very unlikely that it's going to be headed for us, one of the remaining 50. And remember, out of 901, only one was headed our way, and that in several centuries. There's a tiny, tiny, tiny chance that one of these remaining few dozen has a possibility of hitting us, most likely centuries in the future. And it's extremely unlikely it's headed for us this time, because it would, Earth's a tiny, tiny target, and even if it maybe does a flyby of Earth, and then it comes back a few decades later, and that'd be a far more likely thing, and most likely centuries later. So we don't need to worry about those. And then you also, people wonder how long, so I have been told, I shared an email, but I got an email back from David Morris, and he said, please don't tell people that we know for sure that we can see all the 1 kilometre asteroids in advance. So this shows that this was a simulation of the Atlas, and over the next decade of it watching, this is how many of the very small ones. This is 10 meters. That would be about 20 meters high, so it would see 40%. This is just one pair of telescopes. It's not taking account of all the other ones. And then if you get to the 1 kilometre ones, then it'll spot nearly all of them. So it's not, strictly speaking, it's not 100%, but like 99% or something like that. 90, well, that's 80%, that's 90. So, I mean, you talk about 98% or something. And and the reason it spots so many more than of the small ones is you can see it right to the other side of the solar system, and it'll see it as soon as as it shows up around the sun, unless it's very, very distant. And so it's likely to see it a year in advance or more. So, I mean, strictly speaking, it's not totally guaranteed, but it's tiny, 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 tiny. You can really forget about 1 kilometre asteroids. And then you have the long period comets, and so if I have those back there, then the long period comets, and many of them are small. So if you're used to comets that you see them every year every year if you've got telescopes, then you can see faint comets, and occasionally, like there was one last autumn, just visible with binoculars. And then you get these naked eye ones, like Hale-Bopp, and it was quite bright, but it was nowhere near Earth. It was vast, vast distance away. So these ones, they come in from the outer solar system, way out, some from the Oort cloud and some from a bit closer, and they come in, and then from that distance, the entire solar system seems tiny, and Earth's orbit would just be a tiny, tiny, tiny little speck, and they go past great distance, generally at least as far away as the sun. And they look so bright because their tails, it's very, very thin gas that gets blown off by this. The sun evaporates the water vapour, and it spreads out, and it can take up an area of space, a volume of space indeed, for the coma that can be as large as the sun. That's the sun for the ones that have the largest ones. But just really a vacuum of water vapour that is reflecting, and some dust that's reflecting sunlight, and then the tail, and a great long tail, and that can make them very visible from a long distance away. But if you try and look at how far away they actually are, so if we have the speed of a 747, which is about 920 kilometers per hour, and so if you go and look at that, this is how long it takes for a 747 to go around the Earth's equator. So the kilometre is defined by the metre is a millionth of the distance from the equator to the pole, and that makes it 10,000 kilometres. So that's an easy way to remember the circumference. That was the original definition. It's now been changed to something much more precise. So the Earth's equator is about 40,000 kilometres. And to go around the equator would be about 43 hours on the 747, which is our fastest passenger jet. So at that speed, we could go much faster on a military jet. They could go around in a day. But except with a lot of refueling. But if you then look at the distance to the sun, then it would take you 18.5 years at that speed of the 747 to get from here to the sun, or from here to the typical distance of a long period comet. It's usually further than that. 18.5 years of flying day and night, and without a stop, without a rest, without any refueling, and refueling in flight. That is the distance to the sun, so it's very, very far away. And the closest any of them has come is Lexell's comet, and that got to, 6 times the distance of the moon, which is about 100 days away flight. So these long period comets, they fly past a great, great distance. But we might have more of them, so at the moment it's not exceedingly unlikely that any of them come anywhere close. But it's possible we get more of them about 1.3 million years from now. The close flyby of Gliese 710, which is a star, but is headed roughly in our direction, but it's going to pass at quite a distance, but it might send a few extra comets our way. And if that does happen, then our great-great-great-great-grandchildren may have to deflect some long-period comets. And we could do it already. There's the idea of a 100 gigawatt infrared laser array, which shines bright infrared light into space And the idea of building this is to send wafer-thin spacecraft to the nearest stars and throughout our solar system within a few hours. And so this billionaire who's funding these research into this, and if we were to collaborate, there's a kind of collaboration involving that, we could deflect long period comets, but that's not really where it's at for Asteroid. It's much more the smaller ones. So to put that in perspective, and I think I'll do a separate video for the smaller ones. So put it into perspective, if I go back to my answer, then if the Egyptians, they were not that far away from the Industrial Revolution. For instance, they had Pythagoras, Pythagorean triplets. They weren't far away from Pythagoras' theorem. And the Sumerians, they had, this is a cuneiform script, Babylonian tablet with the Pythagorean triplets. And there's quite a lot of maths back then. There were just a little bit away from modern maths, a few steps. They seem like they sort of got an extra couple of years in primary school and they would have had it, as it were. But what to us is primary school maths, to them back then was very advanced stuff that nobody had thought of. And if you could get an Egyptian from back then, a kind of adult kind of clever chap, sort of, they're nearest to a scientist, and put him through primary school for 2 or 3 years, and then return him back to his era, then he could start the Industrial Revolution. So they weren't that far away, and then so this meme that I did, sort of thing, it's not really a very sensible place to put a telescope, but just to kind of make it a vivid image. Then suppose that they had got as far as our telescopes and put one of them on the top of one of their pyramids. Then it wouldn't be it's not the most sensible place for telescopes. So probably they put it on top of a mountain or whatever, and maybe they put them up in Hawaii, and they built those big ones like we've got today. So if they'd built asteroid detection telescopes, then they would still be waiting for the first one that would actually be a warning of the first one that you'd actually need to deflect, or would need to evacuate a city. Although they would have found quite a few of the small ones. I've got quite a few. They would have spotted a few small ones that would have been worth warning people and saying, look, look out, because there have been a few people died of asteroids over the years, but it's a very, very tiny risk. Your personal risk is absolutely minute. You're far more at risk from a hailstone, believe it or not, and far, far more risk from that is your risk of being killed by lightning. So your personal risk from this is very, very small. And it's absolutely awful what the Daily Express are doing. If I have a look at this, if you go and search NASA asteroid warning, and these, if you go and search Google News, then these very scary stories, and we get people who are absolutely terrified of these things. And all the way up to page 10, that's 100. That's like 100 search results, and it continues on, and it's another 50 or so, and you get to probably page 12 or 13. Apart from, luckily, we've got a Snopes debunk, but that's very rare. And all of these are fake news. They're just made up. They're just lies. Like they lied about me. And they just make up stories about NASA, and they claim that NASA said this and that and the other thing, which they haven't. And they keep on saying NASA's done a warning, and it's just awful, the stuff they're doing, and this really, really scares people, and even had people kind of at university and had to put off their a year at university because they're scared of asteroids. And the people who are worst affected by this, then they think the asteroid is going to hit Earth at any moment, and they want to be at home with their loved ones when the asteroid hits, and they're afraid to leave their house. They stay at home somewhere safe, not because they've got any kind of mental issue. They're not people with general anxiety disorder or anything like that. They tend to be just people. It's basically like post-traumatic stress disorder. They believe these stories, they get extremely scared, and they eventually can be afraid to leave their house, and they need therapy. And it's all entirely because they believed this scary nonsense. And sometimes they get suicidal. And really, Daily Express, if anyone from the Daily Express spots this video, and it's not impossible, because they do obviously read my Quora answers, and so it's not impossible that someone from Daily Express will see this video. So if you're from the Daily Express, please look at your conscience and ask yourself, do you want to do this to people? Do you want your stories are scaring people? Really very, very much, very, very scared. More scared than I've ever been in my life. Of anything. These people are afraid of asteroids. And the things you're saying, which not to put a fine point on it, they're just lies. And I know it is part of our culture in the UK that the Daily Express just makes stuff up. But this is impacting people's lives. And I don't think you should, I think it's absolutely wrong to do this. And I think also, if anyone here from Google watches this, Google, please stop running these stories. This is fake news. You're just letting the Daily Express spam you with fake news. It's not true at all. It's just made up. I mean, this is me. Asteroid warning, Earth will be hit by rock size of dinosaur. That's me, and it's the top in Google News right now. The Daily Express claiming that I said that Earth will be hit by a rock the size of a dinosaur killer, and claiming that I'm an expert on asteroids. And both of those are lies. I didn't say either of that. And I know it's a clickbait header title. If you go through, then it says it pushes a little bit more. It says that last one was 100 million years ago, and it's been 66 million years. No, it's every 100 million years or so. But it doesn't give the absolutely important bit of what I said, which is that we know them all, and that we have no risk of being hit by an asteroid. And they just don't say that. So Google News, this is fake news, and they will make a story like this out of a Facebook comment, or just from nothing at all. They take a random asteroid. Indeed, if I bring up this, or I think I'll just make this about Daily Express, and so I've done one about this already. No, not the list. Sorry. So I'm just going to bring up the Daily Express meme, and I'll end with that. And then next one I'll talk about so scroll down a bit, find the Daily Express meme. Daily Express meme. So if we look at this thing that they said, this often gets reproduced. Let's maximize it. And red top tabloid lies, and they are lies. There can't be any doubt here. So they often put this in asteroid stories. They say that these 4 asteroids risk hitting Earth. That is far future and easy to deflect, expected to miss. A half a century away, easy to deflect, expected to miss, which they don't explain properly. And then these are just invented. 2014 JO25. This was never in the risk list. It never had any date. I think that I can't remember which one it is. One of them has no close approach at all. The other has a close approach, but both of them are about as far from the Earth as they could be on the date that they give, 2027. It's as far from the Earth as it could be. And this is the same. And they just make up a date, 2040, make up a probability. It's a totally made up probability because it was never had even the slightest risk. Let's have a look at that now. Look at those ones. This is where 214, one of those two, that is this one, never in the risk list, and this is where it's going to be, somewhere between there and there, just moving gradually from there to there, and that's the Earth. At the time they claim it's going to hit Earth. It's got a risk of hitting Earth. Totally made up. And this is another one, and this is where it's going to be at the time they claim it's going to hit Earth. The furthest it can be in its orbit. It's almost like they've chosen the moment when it's furthest away. And then it gradually moves around to there. It's got a slightly different orbit from Earth, so it's slightly drifting. And the Earth's actually gone around for an entire year in between. It's drifted to there. And this is the one, that's the date in which they claim that one's going to hit. So it's just totally made up. And this is a typical Daily Express story, where they claimed that this chap, could this strange corpse be the world's first proof aliens have visited Earth? And this little clay model or whatever it is, put in a jar, and with an actor looking at it fascinatingly, as if he just discovered the find of the century. And that's the sort of thing they do. And this is the Freddie Starr Ate My Hamster, which is a famous the Sun story, and where they claimed that this comic had put a live pet in his sandwich and eaten it live. They're just made up. And these are the people who are spamming Google News. So Google News, I mean, if anyone from Google News is watching this, you should not run this stuff. It's like yellow papers in the US. This just does not belong in Google News. What confuses them probably is that Daily Express does do other more respectable stories about, like sports, news, politics. They would never lie. Daily Express would never do a fake obituary. They would never say that England had won when it lost. They would never say that Boris Johnson has resigned, say, or that the UK has already left the EU. They would never say anything like that. But they feel perfectly happy telling everyone that we're all going to die of an asteroid. And they don't see that as being the same kind of thing as telling everyone that some sports event was that someone else won, that England or Scotland won or something. They would never ever even dream of doing that, and yet they do. They spammed Earth with 100 very scary posts for people who believe them, which are just nonsense. And at the very least, Google News should have a little box there saying fake news, fake news, fake news. If they want to run fake news, please tell everyone that it's fake news. And just a little box there saying fake news. If you do want to run fake news, then tell everyone what it is. And for your entertainment, Google News has decided to run fake news. And this is what it is. And just have a little box saying fake news for your entertainment. Because that's basically anyone from the UK who knows what the Daily Express is like. And that's what that is. Fake news to thrill you for your entertainment. That's what they should say there. Anyway, so I'll now talk about how we are protected from how the very small asteroids, and I'll do that separately in order to have not such a big video to upload, and so you can easily skip to watch the next one separately.